Hello friends, this is Dave from Dave's Raised Bed Garden. I'm out here. It is the first week of September. It was actually Labor Day on yesterday, so it's the day after, which is the 6th of September. I'm out here at the garden. I'm actually in the shade because it's warm, and then my camera on my phone will actually show it's the temperature and it'll go out and everything. So I'm standing here in the shade for a little bit. I do apologize for not sending out other videos in the past few weeks and everything, but I've had a lot of things that I've been challenged with and trying to do, and also, you know, I have a regular job, so I've been working a lot of hours and everything. But also the challenges is that having a garden and understanding what to do. This year has been a very, very different year overall. Last year I had a very good year. This year I've had a good year, but there have been some challenges along the way. Number one is my physical health. Excuse me, I said help, I do need help. But anyway, my physical health is that, you know, I've had a total knee. I had to stay away from the garden, and actually what I'm having to do is actually deal with it. But right now what I'm getting ready to do, I'm cleaning up a lot of my beds. I'm getting ready for the fall season. I'm actually going to plant the cool weather plants, and I'll be showing you those later on and everything. But I want to talk to you just briefly about the beds. I've been asked a little bit about my beds and everything, what I use and what I've learned. Now remember, I started doing the raised bed gardening back in 2018, so a lot of changes have happened over the years trying to make it better, and then I've done things simple as far as saving money and everything. So I'm just going to briefly show you what the beds look like and everything. And when you're dealing with gardening, especially raised bed, it's what the materials you use and everything. You're going to have to deal with the aspects of it, whether your material, if you're using wood, if it rottens, and then other things, and then what you do and to be able to do it. But one thing that you can do, I'll actually be showing a video this winter. Actually, I'll be working with my beds, changing some things out, getting ready for the next season next year in 2023. But anyway, I'm out here at the garden, but I want to just show you a little bit exactly what I'm talking about, the beds and everything. And it's based on what you want to do as a gardener, that you can develop your own bed based on it. Best thing that I can tell you is go on YouTube, punch in raised bed garden, and then what you can do is you can find all different videos as far as projects. But I'm going to show you exactly what I did. So I'm standing on the outside of the garden. You can sort of see, you'll see the netting and everything probably. The reason I'm showing you these two beds is that these two, and then the next two, and then the one down there further down, the taller bed, which I call it my potato bed in the past. These are the first beds that I made in 2018. If you will notice the beds, what I did to them, if you'll notice that these are 2x4s. I'm going to go in a little bit to tell you. My first beds that I made, besides of the one that I did for my potatoes, which is a deeper bed, these are 2x4s. I stacked them 3, and you can tell these are 4x8 beds. So all 4 of these that you can see through, I'll zoom in again down there, those were also 2x4s. But then my deep bed, I actually used a bigger thing. I wanted to get it as deep as I could. So I actually went 2x12s. With these right here. Now you can tell I've got weeds and grass and everything, but that's every day of gardening. But what I want to tell you, so in the beginning I was trying to do the quickest, the easiest way for me to do my garden as far as doing my beds. At that time the prices for wood was very, very good. I probably paid, I don't think I ever paid over $2. It was $1 and some change that I did for the 2x4s. Now the difference is that I had to use more material. So what I did was that then as I kept working with it, and later on, then I came up, and for these beds, I used the 2x6s, which on these beds right here, I just did these. So last year was the first year that I used these. And then so the year before, the winter before, is when I used these. Now these beds right here are 10-footers. So that's the difference in the variation of what I did. I went to a bigger board, and based on what I wanted to do, the degree to give me the length that I was looking for, but also to give me the variation, the depth that I needed based on my vegetables. So that's the difference on the material that I used. And then also the ones down on the end, I'm actually going to show you for where I planted my corn. The first bed that I used is actually just like these. The only difference is a 4x8. But the second one, what I had some scrap wood, and I'll show you what I did with that. So as you can tell, this bed is just like the 10-footers. I used the 2x6s that I used on our two, and so what I did was, excuse me, it's bigger than that. So actually I used the 2x12s. And so what I want to do is to give me my depth and everything. So I apologize. These are actually the 2x12s, because what I want to give my beds is at least 8 inches of depth for my soil. So that's the difference. Now the price of them was different. This bed right here was the scrap wood that I actually had. I had a bunch of these 1x, and what I did is I did the same thing as the 2x4s, and I actually made this bed a 4x8 bed, and this bed's been very successful for me. So the reason I wanted to show you these is because the variation of what you can do. I've always used raw material. I've used the wood, and like I said, I've tried to do different variations. Now in the very beginning, as far as what my 2x4s, what I did was that my 2x4s was regular, just what we call B grade wood. It was cheaper and everything, and that's what I was using, and it was not treated. All of this is the extreme weather, or it's been sort of treated in the ones that I'm using, that I've used on these beds. What you have to deal with is that the boards are essentially going to rotten over time. If you can see, I'm actually going to walk up here just to kind of show you. Now remember, I just put these boards in, and you can see what this is. These were considered, they were tagged as extreme weather. You can tell right here that where it has eaten it out. Now, the reason I like to use material is that's rotting. As that is rotting out, it's going to degrade. I can add it to my soil, and so is the due process. If you ever look on the videos on YouTube, you'll see a lot of people that have the deeper beds, and I'm talking about like 2 foot deep and so forth, or even deeper. That what they'll do is that they will actually put logs or debris in the bottom of it, and then add the soil on top, so you don't have to use the soil. Where on my bed, my thickest bed, which I went much deeper, is that bed I'm actually turning around to, that still has these beans that I'm going to pull off, is that what this bed is that's 100% soil all the way from the top to the bottom. So there's more into it. Now, yes, it is, and I planted that because I wanted to make sure that this bed was for my deep rooted plants, that I can grow carrots, I can grow potatoes, so there's a lot of depth in there to work with. Now, if I choose to use the debris and put in the bottom of it, I can still use that, because what's going to happen over time is that those wood, those logs and debris that I use and the brush, it'll decay and everything, and it'll go back in, and you can add it to your soil. So that's how you make compost, out of leaves and limbs and so forth. So that's the difference in my beds, worth that variation of what they do. Now the neat thing about raised bed is that what I want to share with you is that it's not hard to interchange these boards. It's based on how you have them screwed in and everything. If you'll notice that this one's actually breaking apart, but anyway, that I actually put a brace in there in the corners, but what they are is they're screwed in there. So what I want to do is that the neat thing about raised bed is that when if I want to remove this board, I can take it off, and I might lose a little bit of soil, but I can pull it back and I can actually replace it for what I need, and I can do my measurements before I take it off, so it makes it easier. Is it cost effective? Yes, in one way, and then no in another. Because if you think about it, 4 years ago and even 2 years ago, that the wood was a lot cheaper than it is now. But that's the part of things that when you're trying to when you're trying to build raised beds and everything. Another thing is based on your soil, the difference that you have in your soil. This bed I'm going to show you, this is one of my first beds that I had. Now remember, I used the 2x4s, which I'm showing. The difference in this soil and this soil is a very big difference. This soil was, when I bought it in 2018, a lot of the companies, the farm and garden centers, they were having a lot of trouble getting the compost and everything in, because it was a very wet year and there was a lot of different variants. Now I have tilled this up. We actually had rain yesterday, and you can see how it is. If I come down here and I grab it, see how it does, it mounds up. It's a little bit different. So with that, this bed is going to hold more water than this bed. This bed and that bed too, is that this is 100% bagged soil. I actually got it from Mitchell's, and this is raised bed garden soil. You see how it just now, with all the rain that we had yesterday, so it's got a very good drainage system. Here's where you understand about what your vegetables need, and that's what's important to know. I don't want to put a vegetable in here unless I add something to it to give it more moisture to be able to hold it longer. is that I want to do a vegetable in these beds. I've used green beans most of the time in here. I also do my cool weather plants, but I don't want to do something because I have to water this a whole lot more than I do this bed. And I've talked to you as far as getting you a temperature, and then also on the gauge as far as settling your moisture. So this bed and the bed over there that I have is that it holds more moisture. All these 4 beds right here, even that bed there, holds a lot more moisture. So when I'm watering my beds and everything, I have to pay attention to it. That's why if you've seen my videos with my cucumbers, I do it here because my cucumbers like a lot of water. My tomatoes have always done good in this bed. I think it's because as long as I keep the water off the leaves, the bottom leaves, and I prune them, it's actually going to do better. My peppers also do better in these beds. I've had a lot of good success with it and everything. And then this past year, what I planted was the beans and also the cucamelons. And they've done very well with it too, because the little cucamelons also, they require moisture too. So it's just based on what you're trying to do. So it gives you a kind of an idea as far as the soil. Now the difference is in this soil that I'm coming down to is that this soil and these beds are what I bought last year. I bought it from a local man here. He's got a company here, and his soil has done so fantastic for me. I always get a good moisture reading. I get a good temperature reading. There's always good things about it, and so I've done very, very well. So wherever you get your soil at, that's what you have to deal with and understanding. So this kind of gives you an idea that how you're picking your soil and how you're picking your bed. It doesn't mean that the soil that I have up here, that is the bag soil, it doesn't mean that this is the right or the wrong. What it means is that based on this is that, number one, it took a lot more bags to fill this bed up, and you can tell over time that how low it's gotten. But then this one, where I had so much problem with it, the problem that I've had to add to it, I've had to add sand to it, I've had to do a lot of other things. So I have to decide how I want my beds based on each year and everything. So that's exactly what I'm trying to do, is to figure out what's best for my garden. And then at the same time, you know, I can take the cheap route or I can take the expensive route. I can find other methods of making beds. These troughs, the metal troughs, you can actually use that. You can use tin roofing. There's so many different variations of beds that you can make for your garden. It's just based on what you think is best for you. So what I challenge you to do is to go out and to find what you think will be the best thing for you to do as far as with your garden. So as I'm talking to you about the beds and everything, and then also a little bit about the soil, you know, each thing that you do as far as for what you're trying to do for your own garden is very important. That's why I always say do your research, go out and find out what you're going to do, because just like for me in the beginning, I was able to get the material a whole lot cheaper. Now, what I did was that I actually looked at a video and I saw the 2x4s, and I thought at the time it was the way that I needed to go. But for the past couple years afterwards and everything, I found out that that's not the best thing for me. Because number one is I'm going to have to replace the boards, which they're easier to replace based on the way that I have them. But it's going to take me a little bit more time. So if my top board is rotten on the bed, I'm going to go ahead and replace the 3 on that side based on it, because I'm going to have to go back the next year. So that's one thing. By having a bigger or a wider selection of the boards and everything, the wood, then I only have to remove one board, or all, you know, the sides of it. I have less to remove, and then I can replace it a whole lot easier. So that's the thing that you have to look at. And then the second thing is most important, is based on how you want your soil. Now underneath mine, I did not say this, but underneath my beds, these beds, especially my last ones, I use cardboard because it's going to decompose. Make sure that you're using cardboard, that you take those hard stickers, those things off, because they do not decompose as easy as what you would with a cardboard. And what you would do is that you would put cardboard down, and then you would soak it down really good, and then put your soil on top of it. See, because of doing that, I actually, when I was cleaning up one of my beds, I looked, and I've not added any earthworms or anything to it. And I actually went in there, and what I was doing is, as I was tilling up or going through it, cultivating the dirt, I actually saw that I had earthworms in there. So that's a benefit for me, where I don't have to go out and get them and then put some more in there. So that's one thing. The first beds, what I did is I used that weed cloth Well, when I started tilling that stuff up and everything, I had to pull it out because what I was doing was tearing it, and what it was doing is yeah, in the beginning it kept the weeds away, but as I was tilling it up and trying to get it up, I was pulling it apart, so I took them out. So that's what I've done. So I've just got bare earth underneath there, and I do have to deal with the weeds and everything. So, but that's okay. That's something that's all right with me. So do your research based on if you're going to do those things, and understand, I think putting a cardboard underneath it is one of the best ways to do, and that helps it decompose, and then you're adding to your bed instead of taking away. So I guess the biggest takeaway that I say is no bed is right and no bed is wrong. It's based on what you think is best for you. So you can use the raw material, the wood. You can even use the metal and you know, the metal roofing or the farm troughs that you can go down to Tractor Supply. There's so many different variations, but it's what you think that you could use and what's best for you as a gardener. What I do recommend you to do is that when you're finding your soil, find out and do your research based on, is bag soil going to be better for you, or going down to a local place that actually does their own composting, or regular just soil. I mean, you have to find out what the variation of what you need. So I hope this has been something that you can use and something that you're going to be able to try to do, that if you're into gardening or trying to get into gardening and everything. And I hope everybody enjoys the video, and I hope it's been a little bit of informational wise that it will help you. And I just thank you for being a part of Dave's Raised Bed Garden. And until next time, take care.